So sit still, focus on your breath. Notice when your mind wanders and just gently bring it back. It sounds almost too simple to do anything measurable, right? But I am so excited to share this with you today because a genuinely massive body of neuroscience research from the past 2 decades proves that this simple practice actually alters your physical brain structure. Today, we're taking a structured look at exactly how meditation changes your brain, and we're going to separate what's actually been measured directly in neuroimaging research from all the wild claims layered on top by wellness marketing.
To get past all that marketing hype, we really have to start with a pretty bold question. What actually happens in your brain? Like, physically. We are going to aggressively step away from the realm of, good vibes and self-reported mood surveys and jump straight into rigorous, measurable neuroscience. We're talking about physical structural transformations that researchers have actually documented by putting people inside MRI scanners.
Okay, so the most consistent effects we see in all of this neuroimaging research happen in two highly connected regions. First, we have the amygdala. Think of this as your brain's threat and emotional reactivity center. It is basically your internal alarm bell. Then we have the prefrontal cortex, which acts as the brain's regulatory and executive control region, kind of like the boss. Understanding the physical relationship between these two areas is absolutely crucial because they constantly work together to process stress and regulate your emotions every single day.
Now, when researchers study people going through an 8-week structured meditation program, the results in these two regions are, honestly, they're incredible. First off, they see measurable reductions in the amygdala's reactivity to stressful stimuli. Your brain's alarm bell literally gets quieter. Second, there's increased connectivity between the amygdala and those prefrontal regulatory regions we just talked about. And that leads right into the third point, a measurable physical improvement and emotional regulation. The brain is actually rewiring its own threat response. Listen to how researchers describe this shift. They call it a genuinely different category of evidence, measured directly in brain imaging, not solely through self-reported mood surveys. This means we are dealing with objective, physiological proof here. It's not just someone checking a box on a questionnaire saying they feel a little calmer today. The actual brain structure is actively and measurably changing in response to the practice. Because if an 8-week program can do all of that, what does decades of practice do? When we look at the structural differences between experienced long-term meditators and non-meditators, some wild patterns emerge. Researchers have discovered altered cortical thickness in the regions of the brain associated with attention and sensory processing. On top of that, they've documented reduced activity in something called the default mode network. So the default mode network, or DMN, it sounds super technical, I know, but it's actually deeply tied to everyday experiences we all have. The DMN is the brain network that lights up and becomes highly active during mind-wandering and self-referential thought. If you have ever found yourself hopelessly overthinking a past conversation, agonizing over the future, or just totally losing focus while staring at a window, yep, that is your default mode network running the show. And long-term meditators physically show way less activity in this wandering mind network. But we do have to look at the whole picture objectively, which brings up a really important causation caveat. Does meditation change the brain over the years to look like this? Or do people who already have these specific structural brain characteristics naturally choose to meditate? Because a lot of this long-term research relies on comparing existing, seasoned meditators to non-meditators, rather than tracking the same beginner over 20 years. It makes it a bit tricky to fully separate the cause from pre-existing differences. We got to keep our scientific rigor intact, right? It's time to ask a really practical question about how most of us interact with this stuff today. Do the standard commercial meditation apps on our phones actually deliver the exact same structural brain changes as the clinical programs used in all this incredible research? On one side, we have structured 8-week clinical programs. These are tracked over time with the same participants, they use standardized training, and they produce that rigorous, undeniable MRI evidence. On the other side, we have commercial meditation apps. Super popular, sure, but they're often unguided, they can lead to scattered practice, and they might not follow the exact protocols that the researchers actually studied. Now, I want to be really clear. This absolutely does not mean apps are ineffective. Actually, if an app uses the core principles, like attention to breath and non-judgmental awareness, it is still likely to offer some real benefit. But the undeniable neurological brain-level changes that we're focusing on in this explainer, those are specifically linked to sustained, structured training. A few scattered minutes on a commercial app while waiting in line for coffee just doesn't carry the same weight of evidence. If you want to see genuine, measurable brain changes, follow these 3 science-backed steps. Step 1. Practice consistently over an extended period of weeks. Step 2. Follow a structured approach or an established program with clear technique, rather than just winging it. And Step 3. Manage your timeline expectations. That first rule is absolutely paramount. Consistency over weeks versus occasional long sessions. The clinical research shows that daily or near-daily practice over several weeks drastically outperforms attempting occasional marathon meditation sessions. It's exactly like going to the gym, right? A 20-minute workout every single day easily beats a single 4-hour session on a random Sunday. You don't need to sit for hours and hours. You just need a routine. Consistency completely overrides intensity when it comes to structurally rewiring the brain. And that brings us to managing expectations with a very grounded anti-hype fact. You should expect moderate, consistency-dependent benefits after several weeks. The measurable brain changes documented here do not happen overnight, and that is a stark contrast to the instant, dramatic, life-altering transformations often promised by wellness marketing. If you go in expecting instant results, you're probably going to abandon the practice long before those amazing structural benefits even have a chance to show up. I want to leave you with this really powerful summary. The brain changes are real. They just require the same unglamorous ingredient as most things that actually work: showing up consistently. Meditation is one of those incredibly rare wellness practices where the underlying neuroscience absolutely holds up. The structural changes in the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex are very real, but getting there simply requires the unglamorous, everyday act of consistently showing up, probably for longer than you might expect. So, here's my final question for you. Have you actually tried meditating consistently for more than a few weeks? Really think about that. I'd love for you to jump in the comments and let me know about your experience. Has seeing the actual neuroscience changed how you're going to approach building a daily habit? It really is a fascinating journey of rewiring your own mind, just one consistent day at a time. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep learning.